The country has come a long way since those "Let the Eastern Bastards Freeze in the Dark" bumper stickers were a popular refrain in Alberta. The battle cry "The West wants in" drove the formation of the Reform Party and then eventually to the election of Stephen Harper's government under a united Conservative Party. But now with Jason Kenney as the Premier designate in Alberta, will national unity questions again flare up over issues like climate and pipelines? To tackle this, the Scrum is back. Tonda McCharles is back. Joyce Napier is back. So is Craig, and our special guest this round is the former Reform Party leader, the founder himself, Preston Manning, and happy Easter to you, sir. Mr. Manning, what do you make of Jason Kenney's victory? And I wonder if Western alienation is an animating force or not.
Well, I think your first question, Evan, I think it's a positive development for Alberta, and I think it'll prove to be a positive development for the country. Jason responded to the ballot question in Alberta. The government tried to make it about identity politics and social issues, but the public were saying, no, it's about the economy and jobs and pipelines and things like that. And Jason responded to that, and they did very well in that election.
Tonda, what do you make of it? I mean, Jason Kenney, we know him well from federal politics.
Fantastic campaigner, yeah. Fantastic organizer, fantastic politician with retail skills that Andrew Scheer would only dream of. So his win there actually capturing sort of the anger and expressing the anger in Alberta isn't really a big surprise to anyone. What does it mean now for the future of so many big debates in this country? It's huge. I think it's a big
What's
development.
the biggest one, though?
I think the biggest one is the climate change plan. Some of the other things that we've heard bubbling, you know, Jason Kenney's desire to renegotiate equalization, all that's way down the road, if it ever happens. But the climate change plan of Justin Trudeau is immediately at stake, I think. Yeah. And when Jason starts pulling Alberta out of the carbon tax that the provincial NDP had in, and you know, pulling the plug on the limits on coal-fired plants and stuff like that, that really will put in play Justin Trudeau's commitment to building a pipeline and trying to push his whole plan forward.
Yeah, Craig, your
Mr. Moore, and I'm trying not to do as he said, that Eastern reporters sneer, as he said, and roll our eyes whenever the West talks about carbon taxes. But, you know, I'm not committed to any carbon taxes. I don't think any of us are. But if the Conservatives believe, as apparently they do, that global warming is an existential issue, a threat to the lives of the next generation, and maybe some people in this one, then what's their plan? We're waiting for their plan. We haven't seen it. We're waiting. So give us the plan, Conservatives, and maybe a lot of us are willing to jump on board.
Let me just get Joyce in on that. Joyce, what's your take on the impact that Jason Kenney, listen, he was running against Rachel Notley, as Tonda talked about, but he was also running a campaign against Justin Trudeau.
He was totally running against Justin Trudeau. But you know, it's funny. Do they really need to get along is the question I ask myself. 3 years ago, all the premiers and the Prime Minister, they got along. It was a big love-in in Vancouver. And what has happened since then? How practical? We still have interprovincial trade barriers. We're still fighting with each other. So I'm not sure that really matters whether they get along or not. But I do think that the carbon plan, it's almost like Ottawa is speaking one language, and you know, now most of the country is understanding something else. So obviously there's something wrong with the way they're selling this carbon tax, because all we hear is a tax, and we know it's not effective enough, we know it's not high enough, and we know it may not move the dial. So what are we doing here?
So let's just note, I'm sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I think there's two things can be said on this. One is that I think the Wynne government in Ontario, the Trudeau government, and the Notley government in Alberta have grossly bungled the application of a market mechanism to environmental protection. If you were going to do this, it should have been revenue neutral, genuinely revenue neutral. It should have been subsidy free, and it should have been accompanied by a reduction in regulation, not an increase, because a market mechanism is supposed to be a substitute for regulation. And I think the way this has been handled, particularly in Alberta, but by Trudeau as well, has set back the concept of using market mechanisms for environmental protection 20 years. On the positive side,
except that Mr. Manning, Trudeau's mechanism does rebate money back to consumers.
Yeah, but for how long will that last?
It's not really revenue neutral, and the public simply don't believe this anymore.
Just another point on Jason Kenney and friends. One noted how conciliatory he was in his first news conference on Wednesday. Why was he so conciliatory? Because first, the campaigning is over. A lot of the issues that he dealt with in the campaign were basically see you in court. They were all issues which are going to have to be settled in courts,
exactly.
or their constitutional violations or whatever. But the one thing Kenney wants badly, and you know, this is not a guy who's a bomb thrower. We've all known him for years, and he's a thinker. He's a calculator. He's aggressive. He may offend some people, but he's smart. And he's now. The campaign's over. He needs friends, and he needs one friend in particular,
he needs
and
a
that
pipeline.
he needs Justin Trudeau, because Justin Trudeau is driving the bus on that pipeline.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but Craig, he has got five. There's 5 allies now. You have got the potential for a coalition of interest between Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick. 5 of the 10 provinces with 60% of the population in the country.
Right.
And I think that group are going to form coalitions. So here's some things that can be done positively.
Except
and I think
they
one
don't
of them
have
is
any
going to be.
control. They have no control over this pipeline. They have no control over the pipeline.
No, sure they do. No, sure they do. No. Sure they do. Here's what they can do. They can get together and they can make a request to the federal government to legislate right away under Section 92(10) of the Constitution. They don't have to change the Constitution. Right away for resources to move to the Atlantic and the Pacific and world markets. And any federal government that turns down 5 out of 10 provinces with 60% of the population with a reasonable request like that will be in deep trouble this fall.
Except
when the
in Quebec, I mean, what that means, let me just translate that what Preston Manning is saying, they could have a right of way. That means Energy East Pipeline, and we've already heard from Premier Legault in Quebec, who said there's no appetite for that.
It's
so what does that mean for Justin Trudeau?
It's all well and good to say that 5 provinces with conservative leaders can pressure Justin Trudeau. The fact is, those one pipeline that you want has to go through BC. Kenny has all but declared war on BC. The other pipeline has to go through Quebec. And the Quebec province, its population, its premier have said no to that. So, you know, they've all dialed down the rhetoric a bit, but that's the clear obstacle.
How have these impasses been handled in the past? This is not a new thing. There's always been provinces. The Confederation is a deal model. Each premier has a list of things he wants to get or she wants to get, and a list of things they're prepared to give up in order to get that. Quebec has a list like that. BC has a list like that. There'll be a deal-making model, and when you got 5 provinces with that kind of clout, I think they can get the deal.
One thing
yeah,
I
but
would
it
say,
may stall. You know, this project has been stalling and stalling, and what you're saying is it's not going to happen any faster.
Well, one thing I would say is that, you know, we're all kind of projecting ahead what might this look like. I think that one thing to bear in mind is that we have seen some surprises. Maybe if Justin Trudeau were to somehow pull out whatever, you know, pixie dusty sprinkle on Donald Trump to get a NAFTA deal done and actually work some deal-making skills, dial down the rhetoric and actually get down to business at a negotiating table, maybe you're right, Mr. Manning. Maybe some deals can be cut. But I think it's going to take that kind of skill and that kind of diplomacy.
Well, we will see. Jason Kenney, in my view, maybe becomes now the unofficial leader of the official opposition outside of Andrew Scheer. All right, I got to leave it there. Preston Manning, Tonda McCharles, Joyce Napier, Craig Oliver, thanks all of you. Great to see you. Happy Easter, happy Passover.